These things are so comfortable. I
Oh,
don't find
yes.
many boots like this that are actually this comfortable. Most of them that are that thick and stiff are not real comfortable. These are. They're just comfortable.
Wolverine,
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah, it's just so comfortable.
Yep, they're some of the best boots you can buy. Okay, we should be coming up here. Come on. I left my phone in there too. I'm not gonna need it. Alan ain't gonna be using it anyway, so I'll get it afterwards. Good to see everybody. I'm a little guy, so I won't sit at this big table. If I'm not sitting up, I look like I'm
Well, that
buried.
that way I don't have to squinch down to be even with you. I can sit up a little now.
Yeah. It's good to be here and to see everyone again this evening. We've been having a great time with the thoughts that we've had. I don't know, are we on okay? You see it? Okay. And so this evening I thought I'd come back and discuss a couple of questions and then move on to what I term for this evening is nature of the Spirit, natures of the Spirit, and kind of show how different natures of the Spirit, antitype, contrast, and real, how it's moving about in the earth in this day, and maybe show a couple patterns to help us out. So there was a question that was asked me, and it's concerning the last couple of messages we had on the dance, part 1 and part 2. And it was if there were other lineages like the Africans and Asians aside from the lineage of Adam, how do we explain the creation stories in Genesis with reference to Genesis 2 and 5, and there was not a man to till the ground? Please, I need to have these answers to explain to others. So I answered back. I said, as we've talked about, Genesis is full of symbols. And Moses was writing those symbols in relation to the lineage and creation from Adam. Or he was writing about the start of the lineage. Before Adam's lineage, there was no man in the lineage of Adam to till the ground. And we have to realize that the biblical Old Testament was a written lineage and acts of civilization for the reference and historic view of the Israelites, especially from Moses thereafter. And I don't know whether you know it or not, but you can go into any one of those nations that it talks about, from the Philistines to the Amorites to the Moabites to the Hittites they all came from Abraham. Abraham had 2 sons, Ishmael and Isaac. Now he had some other sons, but Ishmael had 12 dukes and had 12 princes and had nations that grew up out of him too, and that's where you see a lot of it. But the Bible is all about those 2 seeds. So we have to realize that the biblical Old Testament was a written lineage and acts of civilization for the reference and historic view of the Israelites, especially from Moses writing from Abraham on. The New Testament was for the reference and historical view of another creation, a new creation in Christ. If you will notice, when both creations came on the scene, there were already civilizations in the earth. Jesus was the head of a new creation. But he wasn't the only creation in the earth. There was no man to till the ground of the new creation until Jesus Christ came. And there were thousands of men in the earth, but no one was tilling that ground. Jesus Christ was the first to till the ground of a new creation, just as Adam was the first to till the ground of his creation. And there are many other creations in the earth at that time. Then we were talking about also the lineage, and I went into Ephraim and showed how that Jesus did not come out of the tribe of Judah, but he came out of Ephraim, and showed how that the scepter departed from Judah when Shiloh came, which was Jesus Christ, and the prophecies of Jacob showed that Shiloh, or the shepherd's crown, and the blessing would come through Joseph. And of course it was Ephraim, and Jacob then adopted Ephraim as his firstborn, said, that he would take the place of Reuben. And I thought Wesley Cook made a great comment, and I wanted to read it, concerning the Messiah and the whole calibrating of where the Messiah came through. He said, come to think of it, reading it over the years, it never made any sense that Joseph, Ephraim, was obviously the promised son, and yet Judah was supposed to have the promise. I'm recalibrating, he said. I can just hear William Branham saying, don't put any interpretation to it. But people oftentimes will end up denying Scripture and denying the truth that they claim to be holy, the Scriptures, in order to try to prove their doctrine of things. It's one of the funniest things that there is. So the promise was made from the north, the northern kingdom of Israel, the part of Israel who was more inclined to defy tradition. And that's true. The northern 10 defied tradition and actually went into a lot of false things themselves. And that's why the southern, in all of their tradition and establishment in Judah and Benjamin and everything, they looked at the northern as, those crazy people that come up with all kinds of new things. So the tradition of the south and the defying of tradition in the north with the promise makes up the whole thing. So the promise came from the area of thought, the north, where all the false gods, no God worshippers, and not from the area of the traditionalist. Sounds like today, doesn't it? I know what he's talking about when he says that. I probably shouldn't get into it, and all at the same time not condoning Baal worship. But it was the free-minded who produced the promise. Ephraim, the northern kingdom, Galilee, Nazareth, all those free-minded people that weren't so traditional. It wasn't the traditional thinkers. One can assume it was because of their anti-traditionalist, free-thinking ways that Galilee had attained such a poor reputation amongst the traditionalists, and yet from there came the promise, to which the traditionalists did everything they could to destroy and kill it. I'm just going to copy and paste. Sounds like today, doesn't it? I'll leave it at that. I know exactly where Wesley Cook is coming from, and I do agree with him. If you look at the longitude and the latitude of things, and you run the Mason-Dixon line almost between the north and the south, and you will find that the northern and southern kingdom of Israel laid almost in that same parallel as today. And if you look at 2016, 14, 15, and 16, when this Third Testament kingdom was split, the northern kingdom, Galilee, Nazareth, those free thinkers, those people that they don't want to stay with tradition. They all are in that northern kingdom, and you drop below into the southern kingdom and you get those leaders, and it's all traditionalists. Stick with the message, stick with this, stick with that. Those guys are so crazy, they've gone so far out, you can't believe anything they say. There's no Christ coming from them. So you got the whole north and southern kingdom again, right here, going on, when the Third Testament kingdom split and went north and south. I'll leave it there, and I'll just say we're above the Mason-Dixon line. Nature has taught me how to have a lasting and spiritual relationship with the Spirit and humanity. I've never found a religion, a school, a workplace, or a group of any kind that taught me so much as nature has. I just haven't found it. The woman nature has opened up my love and care, compassion, empathy, oneness, and understanding. And the woman nature has mended my heart, my male ego, my competition, dominance, judgment, indignation, revenge, exclusion, all those things about the male attribute. The woman nature is coming in now and breaking those things up. Yes, nature itself molds and casts you into a new creation. When we can understand that and see it, Buddha made this statement. Everything changes when you start to emit your own frequency rather than absorbing the frequencies around you. When you start imprinting your intent into the universe rather than receiving an imprint on you from existence, that's when things start changing. And that's what we are doing now, whether you know it or not. We are making a huge imprint on the universe. Not too many frequencies are coming in to put imprints upon us right now. It's the woman's nature. She's full of inclusion. She's full of love, compassion. She's full of all those things, full of discovery. She kind of gets up and walks away, sways away from tradition and all those kinds of things and rules and regulations, because of one big reason, that old kingdom is finished. Mm-hmm. And it's the woman's nature to pull out of those old things into new things, to pull out of those old rules and establishments. And when something is dying, it's a woman's nature to bring new life into creation. And that's what's going on. We are transforming from a death culture. What I'm saying is that old culture's dead. Church is dead. When I say these things, don't get afraid. Just think about what I'm saying. We just need to change terms a lot. Church is dead. Christianity is dead. The books, the Bible, all those things. For this age that we're in, those things are dead or dying and fading away. And it's not that we have turned on the Spirit of the Lord. You remember a long time ago, maybe 6 months ago, I said there's only one thing that can stop the Spirit from moving in the earth. And that is the Spirit itself. He moves one way for a long period of time, through a transition, through a dispensation, through a testament. He moves that way for a long time, but at some point, you don't stop it. When I say you don't, there's no devil or there's no evil spirit out there that's changing things and moving the life out of Christianity, moving the life out of all those things that used to have so much life in it, church and going to church and doing this. There's no devil moving the life out of that. It's the Spirit Himself that is transitioning, refurbishing, bringing about a new culture. He's moving us out. The Spirit is moving us out of a death culture into a life culture. We are transforming from a death culture to a life culture. And the contrast and the antitypes is doing the opposite. We're watching them as we're moving into a life culture. They're falling into a death culture. And they're falling into traps, and they're falling into all kinds of things. And it's a terrible situation to watch it all die. But at the same time, you have so much hope, so much faith, and so much reality built up in you that you're moving on. And all these things that are being said under the old, you're not letting it imprint you. And you're not holding yourself back and staying with that creation, but you're moving forward into a brand new creation. The old nature is dying. It's dying out. I'm talking about natures of the Spirit. 50 years ago, it was the nature of the Spirit to find you a church. It was the nature of the Spirit to listen to a pastor. It was the nature of the Spirit to do all these things and to follow. And as a woman, it was the nature of the Spirit for you to surrender and to lay down your life and to be silent and to do all these things. It was a nature, and it was a real nature, a live thing that the Spirit is doing. But today, the Spirit is putting a halt to that. The Spirit is letting that die out. He's letting it go away. The Piscean ways, the building up of the hierarchies and lifting people up and lifting up books and lifting up famous men and doing all these things. It's dying out. And it's even dying out in the other cultures, not just in the spiritual culture, but look at the Hollywood culture. It's dying out. Nobody's going. They're not making any money. The government was going to have to fund Hollywood. There's so many things happening, and that old culture of lifting up idols and lifting up these famous ones, they did some of it to themselves in the things they were saying and all the different things, but it was the Spirit's way of killing out a culture. Today you can say to me any famous Hollywood actor, you can tell me what they said. It's like water on a duck's back. I could give a hoot what they said. I used to pay attention. When they said things, the Spirit was behind it. Today, they are just rattling off like dead wood, making a lot of noise in the wind. Because the Spirit has put a stop. He's put a death culture into that. The old nature's dying out, fading away. And the flow of the Spirit is bringing in another nature. We're coming into another nature. We're watching the male nature drop into the background, die out, become less dominant, to have less of a voice. Whatever you want to say about it, we're watching the male nature fall into that. And it's the symbolics of it is out here, and you're watching everything from politics to everything under the sun that's going on out here, workforces and families and cultures and everything, and the woman is having more of a say. And a lot of times the woman is the breadwinner. A lot of times the woman is the wiser. And it's raising up among us because that is a symbolic of what this real woman nature is. So we have this The old nature's dying out, fading away, and the flow of the Spirit is bringing in another nature. We have said that the male nature is the testator, the establishing, the establishment, the dominance, the rulership, the unbending way. That male nature comes in and it begins to set up all those rigid things and those fences and those property lines, so to speak, and those all of the lines that are drawn and all of the wars that come about. It's the male nature that's doing all those things. And the male nature is the testator. Once you've come through a transition, then the male nature comes in and just sets all kinds of rules, lines, regulations, and everything else into the middle of that. And you learn all kinds of details from it and principles and signs and wonders and everything else. But then after a while, that very thing that you were learning off of, the Spirit moves on, and that thing becomes a death culture. And it begins to die, and it begins to fade away. And new words, new languages, new systems, new understanding, new discoveries begin to come in. Well, when that happens, the male is the establisher, the dominant and the rulership, the unbending way, and it takes us into every little detail of principle and how we need to set up on this and make this our kingdom. So the male, actually you could say this, after a transition, the male creates the kingdom. And then the woman, or the female nature, the woman nature of the Spirit, natures of the Spirit is what we're talking about. The woman, or the female nature, we view as the transitionist. The nature that brings a change. I think I used some pretty simple things the last couple of times around, like you move into a home, husband and wife, the home can stay exactly the same for 20 years, 30 years. The husband don't care. You don't got to move no pictures around. You don't even have to shake a rug out. Don't matter to me. If I mop the floor once a month, wipe the ring out of the tub occasionally, and if your shirt gets too dirty, just turn it inside out. That's the male nature. When the socks start stinking, it's time to wash them. It's a male nature. And the female nature we view as the transitionist, the one that says things gotta change. The one that says, I'm not leaving that picture there another day. And this rug's going to get shook out on the line, or we're going to buy a new one. Or the transitionist is that lady, that female nature, the nature that brings change and discovery and new life as it spreads across the earth. Now you take what I'm using as a little family unit, and you pull that out and you start spreading it all across the earth, the great things that are happening. And when you have entered into something, then the male nature kind of takes control and sets up the guidelines, the rules, the establishments, the principles, all the laws and the regulations. And then you kind of set in that for a little while, and it starts getting musky and old and doesn't work anymore. And that woman wants more. She wants to see more. She wants to understand more. And so she begins to change things. The transitionist comes in, and it brings new life, and it spreads across the earth. We saw the view of Jacob in his prophecies, how he talked about Israel in Genesis 49, and we opened up the fact that Israel is the woman nature. When you're looking at nations, when you're looking at the earth, Israel is the woman's nature. He called her a mother. He called her his daughter. He called her his wife. All those things. She carries those attributes about her. She's the female nature, or the woman nature, kind of spread throughout the earth. We view this woman as a transitionist. She changes things. She changes dispensations. And going through the transition, languages change, rooms change, ideas change. Everything changes, and you roll through, and the old books are put somewhere else, and there's new magazines, there's new books, there's new this, there's new that. There's new everything. It rolls through, and you get new clothes, and you get new this. The woman is a transitionist. And that nature brings change into the earth, and it brings discovery. Discovery of many things, from spiritual to material to natural to physical, and right on down the line. New life as it spreads across the earth. The way Jacob talked about that woman and how that the spirit and nature of Israel would go throughout the earth. And then he said, in the latter days, this is how she'll raise up. This is what she'll look like. And we went through that over the last 2 sessions. What we're now talking about is not one or the other attribute of the male-female. One doesn't take over and then control from then on. And the other doesn't take over and control from then on. They're really one spirit. They're just one spirit. And they're 2 attributes of the one spirit, and the one spirit raises up an attribute and uses it, and then kind of takes the spotlight off of it and raises up the other attribute and uses it, takes the spotlight off of it. And those male-female attributes are working in unison as one. We're not talking about just one attribute, but we're talking about the male-female being in the spotlight, and they are both cyclically working together all the time. You as an individual may be in a male cycle right now. You got male-female in you. And you may be in a male cycle for a couple of years when everybody around you is running a female cycle. And that might be why you contrast sometimes. That might be why you have differences sometimes. Every one of us are individuals, and we run through the cyclical male-female attributes, feelings, the ways we live, the changes we make. We run back and forth in that cycle ourselves. And then nations run in that cycle. And then dispensations run in that cycle, and types and shadows run in that cycle. When you start looking at it, that whole cycle of male-female is never ending, constantly rolling back and forth. And as I said, I believe we're in a dispensation and we're rolling through a woman cycle in the earth. But that doesn't mean that you might not be in a male cycle yourself. Or maybe your nation is, or maybe your family is, because you need to decipher and understand the woman don't just take over, and the male don't just take over, but there are several dimensions and many realms that are going on at the same time, and you have to fluctuate and pay attention to who might be in a male cycle and who might be in a female, and what your nation's cycle is, and what your family cycle is, and what the earth is going through. Now, I can see the earth. It's going through a woman cycle right now. It's going through a tremendous transition cycle. So we're not talking about just one. One does not have to have dominance and the other just leave or separate from the other in order to shine. They are one spirit in unison, and you don't have to take the shine off of one to make the other shine. Some people said, well, you act too much male. Your messages are too much male, Brother Parnell, and the female ain't coming out. Well, that might be true to you, but there might be more female coming out of me than I have ever had come out of me, and I feel like I'm in a male contribution. So you need to think about one another, vice versa. These attributes are cyclical, and rotate in unison depending on the need of humanity, depending on the need of you as an individual, depending on the need of you as a family, depending on the need of you at work, in that family, in that career, depending on the need of a nation, depending on the need of humanity as a whole. One cycle or the other may be going through the rotation and being the dominant one, but it doesn't mean that the other one's just dead and gone. It's here, and it's going through its cycles too. These attributes are cyclical and rotate in unison depending on the need. Right now, we view the woman. When you take a look at the zodiac and the universe and the earth, we view the woman coming into her cycle of transition. Uranus, the planet, is a feminine planet, and it's moving into its cycle, and becoming the great culture in the earth of discovery and change, tree huggers, lovers, compassion, empathy, and we see a oneness moving across the earth in the flavor and in the nature of a woman, and the old dominacy, the earthly dominacy of male rulership, man rules after Eden. We've gone back, and we're on the other side of that again. We've gone back to the future. And so we see this happening all around us. Uranus moving into a cycle, becoming the great culture of discovery and change, and earth lovers, compassion, empathy, and we see a oneness moving across the earth. It actually started, in my view, in music. Go all the way back there at the opening of the seals, when William Brennan was opening the seals. Look at how music was exploding across the earth. And music became a universal, if you want to call it that, way of peace. Everybody loved music. And everybody could lay down their arms and quit fighting one another and enjoy music. I even seen it's a true story where that in Germany, it came Christmas, December the 25th, and the German army laid down their arms and came out of their huts and came out of their holes and everything else, and just began to walk to the United States and the New England and all them, and begin to walk to them. And at first they were playing music. They were playing Christmas music. This is a true story. And finally England and the United States realized, hey, this is not a trick. And they laid their arms down, and they come out of their holes and everything else, and they hugged one another. Some of them cut one another's hair. They sat there and smoked together. They sang Christmas songs together, and it went on almost till New Year's. Almost 5 days. Music brought them together and brought them outside of war. And I see music as being one of the things, even today. Just look at what's the name of them? They've been around for about 25 years. Play for Change. Playing for Change. They're all over the world. Mm-hmm. And they make sure you know that everybody from all over the world, from Senegal to USA to Ghana to here to there and everywhere, and they got them in there, and they're playing everything from congas to bongas to violins to strings and everything else, and they're white, they're black, they're yellow, they're red, and it's pulling a culture together, a culture of life rather than death. Cultures of separation bring death. Cultures of unison and inclusion bring life. So it's going on all around us. The opening of the seals brought on a culture in music that began to spread across the earth. You've seen it, and maybe us message folk didn't like that music too well. But you know what the Holy Spirit told me some years ago? the message, people rejected me when I brought to them music and prophecies and these things. They rejected me, and you need to turn and go listen to the lyrics of this music that I brought during that time, and you'll find many great messages that were coming from me. And I did that. And some people, they walked away. They said, Don Parnell's went worldly. He's went after the world. He's listening to rock and roll. He's doing this and that. And they said all kinds of things about me. But I was doing what the flow of the Spirit told me to do. And this is what I seen. I seen the opening of a brand new culture that was spreading across the earth. I seen it in music first. And for decades after, religion kept right on warring. Nations kept right on warring. But music came together and loved one another. It was the first move. And it's starting to show in many of the cultures. And I could name off many of them, from Bob Dylan to Bob Marley to and you could just take off. I could just take off and start naming so many that everybody hates. But inside their music was many, many great things. Morrison, all of them, right on down the line. Playing for Change for 25 years, reaching across the earth, bringing together every culture. The woman's nature, not only spreading out in the nature of the woman Israel, but spreading out in the nature of music. It went from a male dominancy to a female, and the music went into more compassion and love and lyrics and lyrics against war, against hatred, against all these things. And it began to form a culture that didn't want any more battle. They didn't want any more war. They didn't want to see their sons going to war in some strange land and coming home in a pine box, no matter what nation it was. And slow but sure, we were building a culture that doesn't want these geographical lines and wars. And I seen it first in a woman nature rise right up in the music. So we seen a sea of brass. I'll put it like that. Go read your Bible. Sea of brass. What was it, Brother Parnell? The sea of brass is the male attribute. Brass is judgment. Brass is principle. Brass is what they made the lavers out of. Brass is what the heavens turned to when Elijah looked to them. Brass is what brought on famine and pestilence. Brass is what brought on judgment from the pillar of fire throughout the Old Testament. Brass is what they had to eat when he got angry at them about their false gods. You can go on and on about brass. It is the male judgment and the male ego and the male dominance and the male rulership. But we find that the sea of brass became a sea of glass. That's the scripture. A transparent sea. All of a sudden, no judgment, no hatred, no envy, no strife, no rulership, no wanting to dominate one another, but a transparent sea of glass. How did it do that? Spiritually, we are beginning and understanding at the opening of the seals that it's not church, it's not separate cultures, it's not separate races, it's not separate things that we want to separate about ourselves all the time. It's not separating yourself from the world. It's not any of those things anymore, but we've become transparent and able to look through everything, understand. Transparency means to understand what's going on. And we moved off of a sea of brass and became a sea of glass. Or we moved from a male attribute and the female attribute began to transition us to a more understanding and open civilization. That's what's going on. We're transforming by renewing the mind, changing terms. It's like name changes as a strategy forward. Making these changes, changing terms, changing ideas, changing the things we're looking at. Changing the language. I'll just tell you now, I've got a few that are working with me, and I'm working with them on message and on Messenger, and they're out of the message, and they're saying, Brother Parnell, the things you're saying are so far beyond our language. We don't even, they're not talking about Spanish and English and they're talking about what you're saying. My God, we've never heard these things before. We've never heard these terms before. We never came into anything like this, and we need your help. And I'm working with them, and I'm helping them, and showing them that we change from brass, judgments, languages of judgment and hatred and anger and ego and dominance and rulership, into a language of love and compassion and consortiism and working with one another and doing the things that we need to do. So we have this going on, and we're making the changes, transforming from a death culture to a life culture. And the death culture is, I'm not talking about something like it's a horrible thing. I'm just telling you the Spirit ain't in it anymore. The Spirit is not there anymore. And if you don't move with the light before long, the path back there is dark. And so that's what's going on. It's fading out. We're moving into a different mindset, a life mindset. We are thinking on natures of the Spirit. What natures is the Spirit flowing in today, and how they spread across the earth in their season. The Spirit has an endless amount of natures. And He doesn't use the nature once. The Spirit is eternal. That nature may chase back around, and you may run into it again. You run into it in a family problem. You run into it in an individual. You run into it in a nation. You run into it. They used to have it 1,600 years ago, and now they got it again today. They used to have it 200 years ago, and now again today. The Spirit moves in humanity by the season, by the culture, and by what humanity needs at the time. He will break a nation, a nature open out into the earth. So we see this going on all around us. We are thinking on natures of the Spirit and how they spread across the earth in its season. I wrote this down. Now I'm saying this. Don't go getting all upset about Don Parnell speaking against this and speaking against that. I'm using and showing you straight up facts about what's going on. I was talking with Brother Mitten. He said one of the things that he said, I've listened to your last 4 or 5 messages and went over them and things, and he said it's just it's undisputable. This is so full of facts, so full of scripture, so full of science, so full of all these things. It's one place he even wrote it out on Facebook for everybody to see and said this is the greatest explanation of the woman nature that I have ever heard. Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that because of me. I'm saying that because it is. If it was him saying it, I'd be jumping on top of it. If it was Alan or Brother Stuckless or Brother Marion, every time you guys bring something up, Brother Wesley Dolphin, Wesley Cook, James, anybody, when you say something and it resonates, I'm jumping all over it. I enjoy it. I like it. And that's what he's saying. This thing is so full of what is resonating. And I wrote this down, and while we were talking, I said, we are super spreaders. Oh, now, Brother Parnell, you know where that word came from. That's the COVID. People do certain things, and they cause it to be they become a super spreader. Yeah? If you want to be a super spreader of COVID, then go ahead and talk about COVID. But I don't want to be a super spreader about COVID. We are super spreaders. We are the move of the Spirit. And the Spirit moves a nature and spreads it across the earth. We are spreading a nature, a woman's nature, across the earth right now that's coming out of the prophecies, coming out of the books, coming out of the the dispensations coming out of everywhere, and this woman's nature is rising up, and it's a dominant nature. It's a nature that's moved under the spotlight into the earth, and this woman's nature is taking humanity into a much, much, much greater intellectual, much greater scientific, a much greater spiritualistic, a much greater in every way. It's raising up the love, the compassion, the openness, the transparency, the sea of glass. It's doing all of these things, and it's opening it up and opening it up more and more and raising up this woman's love, this woman's nature, and we are super spreaders of that's going on. We are super spreaders. We're in the flow of a spiritual river. And we have something in us that we're spreading all over the earth. And the antitype's right there. All you got to do is watch it. Every nation, COVID. Corona is what it originally was called, the coronavirus. Corona meaning the crown. And we're spreading it. Not the COVID, not the coronavirus, but we're spreading the crown. We're spreading the understanding. We're spreading the mind. That's, Brother Branham said, you're going to go above the mouth. You're going to go above the eyes. What's up here? You put a crown on it. What's up here? Hair. You do all those things with it. So I'll talk about this just a little bit. We are super spreaders. We are the move of the Spirit, the flow of a spiritual river, and we went into the laboratory of the Spirit. We stepped into the lab. We as scientists, spiritual scientists, we stepped into the laboratory of the Spirit and are spreading a new nature all across the earth. That's what we're doing. Just like they stepped into a lab, created a virus, and started spreading it all over the earth. We stepped into a spiritual lab and created a new nature, and we're spreading it all across the earth. Spreading a new nature rapidly. It's an amazing happening. Creativity, we've created it. We've brought it about. Transformation, moving us into a whole new lifestyle. What has COVID done to you? It's moved you into a whole new lifestyle, a whole new way of living, a whole new way of thinking, a whole new way of socialism, a whole new way of distancing, a whole new way of not revealing yourself, a whole new way. They took the contrast of not exposing your identity to the public. They took the contrast of a virus. We, on the other hand, started spreading a nature. It's an amazing happening. It's creativity and transformation in its season. We're creating and we're transforming the earth into a new nature. A nature moving across the earth in us. And it's going forth from the throne of the man-child. You say, where are you talking about, Brother Parnell? The throne of the man-child who has grown to maturity within his system. You say, what system? What man-child? What throne? Where's it all at? Humanity is the system. Humanity is the system of the red dragon. The red dragon being humanity and its systems, the beast being set up. And what we find is, and the symbol, at the time that it first opened up, at the opening of the seals, the symbol back there was the red dragon, Vietnam War, all the protests, music, and all the protests and poems and lyrics and everything else coming out of it. And the red dragon was right there to devour the child and took the child in. The red dragon devoured the child, and when the child went in, we've been in the system now for 50 some years. And the system was Vietnam when the seals were open. And there stood Ephraim, William Branham, fighting the red dragon. The United States fighting Vietnam. It was all right there, right in front of our eyes. Now it's China. And what's the emblem of China? The red dragon. What was one of the greatest movies to come out back there during the time of William Branham? It was Bruce Lee, and it was called Enter the Dragon. That's what we were doing then. Well, we've been in the dragon. We've been the man-child for 50-some years now. Now it's China, communist China, with the emblem of the dragon, and we have entered that dragon, taken the throne, the heart of the dragon, and are changing the whole world with our culture. We're changing the whole DNA of humanity. And while we are spreading a new nature out into the earth and a new way of life and a new understanding and a new living, that same emblem, that symbol, that antitype, went into the laboratory, created a virus, and started to spread it all across the earth right out of the red dragon. It's all happening right in front of our eyes. Coronavirus is the antitype and parallel of what is happening in us, in the spirit. Corona being the crown. A nature moving across the earth. The spirit sits on the throne of the dragon, the heart. The heart of the dragon, and directs every change. You're worried to death about all these changes? We're directing every one of these changes. The spirit in us is spreading across the earth, and it's us, and we are directing all of it, directing all the changes. No worries here. No worries at all about who's in control. This woman nature is in her understanding and bringing all things about. The spirit sits on the throne of the dragon, the head of the heart of the dragon, and directs every change. The dragon, the systems want to hide from humanity what is going on. That's the red dragon. He doesn't want to change. Wants to hide from the system what is going on. By hide, I mean hide its identity. Hide where it came from. Hide what it's about. Keep you in the dark. Stay hidden. They want to hide it. They don't want the apocalypse to take place. They don't want the unveiling to take place. They don't want the public to believe the truth. That's what's going on all around us. I'm speaking on a spiritual nature of things now. Natures of the spirit moving into the earth. The natures of the spirit. When you don't wear a mask and expose and reveal things, you're considered a super spreader of the corona. If you wear a mask, if you do the things they ask you to do, if you don't wear and you expose and you reveal things, you're considered a super spreader of the corona. A mask is hiding and veiling, putting a veil on. And we're unveiling ourselves. They say there shouldn't be any revealing in this day. You've heard it from the message. No more prophets. You can't reveal anything. You got to keep it hidden. You got to keep a mask on. You can't reveal. You got to keep a veil on it. Only prophets can reveal these things. And there's no more prophets. So nothing more can be revealed. Keep yourself covered up. Stay inside. Don't you try to spread this news that you have. When you don't wear a mask and expose and reveal things, you're considered a super spreader of the crown. There should be no revealing in this day. Don't do such a thing. Don't try to bring out anything new. Who's that guy sitting on his back porch in his sunroom? Who's he think he is spreading this all across the earth? Doesn't he know he's a super spreader? It's against the law. Yeah, you can only have so many. You can't just give this to everybody. It's against the law. This will become more predominant and clear as we move into 2021. But it will not stop the change. You're a super spreader. I have said before, There's only one thing that can stop the move of the Spirit, and that is the Spirit itself. The Spirit has stopped a move numerous times and brought that nature that it was serving in to death. Old Testament, New Testament, seals, TTT, Third Testament, on and on and on. You can just look at the dispensations. You can look at the nations and see how they would raise up and flourish across the earth. And great things come out of them. Transportation and money systems come out of Rome. Philosophy and things come out of Greece. And you can just keep naming off all these places and the great things that came out of them. But when you're finished with them, the Spirit moves out of it and it becomes a dying culture. It becomes a death culture. There's only one thing that can stop it, and that is the Spirit Himself. When He decides that He wants to kill His own nature, that He wants to stop His own nature, that He wants to put a damper on His own nature, that He wants to pull the spotlight off of what He's doing, He's the one that does it. He don't have no devil that says, okay, Mr. Devil, you go on and do that now, and I'll deal with you later. He does it Himself. It's who He is. He does it based on the season. The Spirit has stopped a move throughout the world numerous times and brought that nature to death, stepping into a new nature based on the season. The red dragon is trying to keep the man-child off the throne. Don't get real upset at me here. The red dragon, the system, the establishment, is trying to keep the man-child off the throne. The heart of the system. And the red dragon right now is raising up. You can see him raising up and flexing his establishment muscles in the government, in Congress, because this is going to affect the whole world. Whatever happens here between now and January 20th is going to affect the whole world atmosphere. And the red dragon is trying to keep that man-child off the throne, the heart of the system, Ephraim, the USA, the outsider that entered the dragon 4 years ago. And he wasn't no politician. He wasn't a Democrat. He wasn't a Republican. He wasn't a libertarian. He was a businessman. He was an outsider. He was a man-child, one that nobody wanted, and the red dragon wanted to devour him. And he went right in, took the throne, and the red dragon didn't change him. He changed the red dragon. He's brought out so many changes. The world will never be the same because of this man-child that I'm talking about. He may be finished. I don't know. Maybe the Spirit's going to put a stop to that. And the Spirit's going to raise up another symbol, another emblem, and He's going to continue on. But one thing it won't change, that's the move of the Spirit and where He's taken us. The red dragon's trying to keep the man-child off the throne. The president. Brother Branham said, we're going above the eyes. We're going where there's no more movement. Well, take a look at me right now. What's up there? What do you see up there? Hair. That's all you see out here, and it doesn't have any movement. It doesn't go anywhere unless you decide to comb it. Hair. Above the eyes. Hair is the glory. Hair is the pillar of fire. Hair is all those. The woman's hair was a type of the pillar of fire, the glory of the Lord. Samson's hair was a type of the pillar of fire, the glory of the Lord. So we see this, and they're trying to take this president, this orange-haired man. When you look at it, it looks like the pillar of fire. Same color. And it's hanging there. And it's leading the USA and leading the world. And they don't like it. It's a man-child entered the throne, come into the heart, trying to change everything. And the establishment wants the hair out, wants the glory out, it wants all that out. Looks like he has, his hairs become the pillar of fire, become one with the mind. The hairs above all the moving parts, exactly where our prophet of Laodicea said we would go. And now what's happening? There's a great movement to try to keep this identity from moving on. He may be finished. I believe he's done all that he should do. And I don't believe he done it as just one man. And that whole scene may be finished, and there may be a whole nother scene comes in. I don't know. But I see what's going on. And I see the changes, and I see the movements of the pillar of fire, and I see the pillar of fire making changes all across this world, and I see the governments toppling left and right, and I see the law enforcements, and I see everything else falling, I see everything else toppling, and I see all of these things happen in these mass movements, and I know the pillar of fire, that where we moved into, above the eyes, up into the glory, up into the hair, I know it's moving in the earth now. And it's making all kinds of changes. The Spirit may very well stop that symbol. Then again, he might not. And he may move up towards another symbol, letting that one die. Moving the blessing off of that, moving it on, putting it back here in the death culture, and letting it die out. But no worries. We are the Spirit. And we will quickly see the transformation further, and we'll move it into something else, and we'll move humanity with it, and we will see what the symbols are rising up, whatever they might be. We are the leadership of it. We are the mind of it, and we are the ones doing it. I have said for over 4 years now that the woman nature was rising up because we were going through another transitional dispensation. Go back to 2014, 15, and 16. We were 50 years in the Third Testament, and the male attribute had revealed all the details of it. He had it down pat. The male attribute had the principles of it, had the rules and the regulations of it, had the lines of it, had the geographical lines drawn, had everything drawn of it. We were the elite. We were the greatest. We were the mind. We were all these things. And we drew up all the male ego that we could possibly conjure up. And the male attribute had revealed all its details, and it was time to move on because it became a dying culture. And we discovered so much more. Think about 14 till today. And look at what the Spirit in us, the woman nature, the transitioner, has discovered in 6 years. The woman nature is an amazing quality of the Spirit. Are we understanding? Mitch Edwardson said to me, we've been emphasizing the woman being one in sameness as the man, and highlighting the global trend taking place since the turn of the century. We've all been seeing it. Been seeing the rise of woman, the nature of woman, as a symbol of the transition and transformation forward. Back to the future before the introduction of rulership in Eden. So Brother Mitz is talking about, he sees this woman's nature that's raising up now, transitioning us and taking us back to the future, or back to the days before the rulership, before the Garden of Eden. Thanks for expanding my vision and taking it to another level in this over your messages. This teaching from you on the woman's nature is the greatest I've ever heard. It is the Spirit moving us forward. I am aware that the language is changing as a natural part of the evolutionary process. And he's not talking about English, Spanish, and German. The language of the message, the language of the woman and her nature, everything is changing. In fact, we're able to make conscious conceptual alterations in the spirit of exploration and discovery. The female nature allows that, and it does. We can go out on a limb, so to speak, and not worry about somebody cutting it off on us. We can travel until we derail, and that's okay. We'll pick up everything that we've seen along the way, and we'll keep moving. The woman's nature can take us into conscious, conceptual alterations in the spirit of exploration and discovery. Not to make ourselves better, as you plainly said, but for our enjoyment, to enjoy it. Brother Mitta, still speaking. Christianity doesn't cut it for me, and it hasn't for many years now. I think of the presence as an inexhaustible energy with limitless form. I always liked what he was saying, and I always liked him traveling with me. I always thought of him as the M&E, Mitta Edwardson, Moses and Elijah, the M&E. I remember when the Moses and Elijah understanding began to first come out, Rick Hall, who's going to come and visit me for 3 days tomorrow. Rick Hall and I and Andy Craig were sitting in Max and Irma's, which in the United States is termed M&E. And the understanding of Moses and Elijah and how he came into the earth, into the seals, opened them up, and the spirit of Moses and Elijah is here upon us today. All that came out, and we came and began to minister it while we were sitting in Max and Irma's at Moses and Elijah, M&E. So I watch all those things because there's always symbols all around you of what's going on if you have an eye to pick it up. So I asked him, I said, what do you think about my concepts of the Bible? I know the Bible like the back of my hand, and almost everything I dig into, I use the patterns of the Bible. I very seldom mention it as a dominant book anymore because, as your last prophet in New Zealand said, this book has been turned into an idol. And I can see that. The Bible has been turned into an idol. When it is used, if I just bring the Bible, you don't see a Bible with me much anymore. If I bring the Bible to the table with me and I start talking in a conversation, most minds immediately shut off of any other form of Christ. The Bible's the only way. The Bible's the anointed one. The Bible this, the Bible that. And to me, when I start feeling that around me, I said, it's like a stench in my nostrils when that smell starts going on. I seem to find many thousands resonating with the same approach now. It's not that the Bible's bad. It's not that the Bible's no good. And it's not that the Bible's not anointed. But it's not the only thing that's anointed. It's not the only place the prophets spoke. And it's not the only place the Spirit is moving today. And it's certainly not the only place that the woman's nature is expressing itself. It's expressing itself. I showed you music. I showed you different ways. In every culture, it is expressing itself. I said, to me, it just feels so out of season trying to use that approach of The Word says, the Word says, the Word says, the prophet said. To me, trying to use that approach is like a dying nature to continue on that old route. I just feel like I'm going back into a death culture. He wrote back and he said, I understand exactly where you're coming from. The woman nature is taking us into another spirit, another day, and another culture. That's what it's about. Transitioning. I wrote this poem about 5 years ago or so. I don't know, 4 years ago. I actually posted it once on Facebook, and it didn't resonate. I think one or two people said, nice poem. But that wasn't what it was about in my heart. It's something that connected with me, and it was, I wish you time. And this connects with me and resonates with where we're going. This woman's nature needs time to come to fruition, to come to maturity, to break into many, many, many more realms, to open up into many, many more cultures. And I wish you time. You're the ones that are reaching out here and doing a lot of it. I wish you time. I do not wish you any gift. I wish you to enjoy what most do not know how. I wish you time to laugh and play and have fun. If you use time properly, you can get what you want from it. I wish you time for your work and your spirituality, and not only for yourself, but also to dedicate some of it to others. Use this time. You are a super spreader. I wish you time not to rush and run in life. But my wish is that you have time to be happy. I wish you time not only for it to pass, but for you to stay in it, realizing it is eternity. Time to be amazed and time to have confidence. And not just for you to see it on a clock. Oh, that's what time it is. It's not what it's about. I want you to see the seasons. I want you to flow in the season. I want you to taste the seasons and the detail and the things that are going on. I wish you time to touch the stars, enjoy the moon, and time to grow, to mature, to be you in this great thing that's happening. I wish you time to have hope and faith and love. It does not make sense to yearn for these things. You should have it. I wish you time to find yourself within yourself, to live every day and every hour and every moment as yourself. I also wish you time to understand and accept life. I wish you, from my heart and yours, that you have time for life, prospering, being happy. Time for all these things. The woman's nature is infiltrating all the realms, all the dimensions. It's saturating everything right now. It's transitioning every realm. You can't leave one realm out. All the realms, all the dimensions, everything is transitioning. I was talking to a brother and we were talking about what we had discovered about Jesus. And they're in the sixth dimension and they are having their talks and they are listening to our talks and they are progressing as we progress. And we were kind of laughing about it and said, we uncovered the understanding that Jesus didn't come from Judah, that he came from Ephraim. And the brother was laughing and he said, I can see them all in that dimension. And he said, thousands were standing there and millions that were Judah and millions that were Ephraim. And Jesus was standing among the Judah. And the revelation come out. Jesus didn't come out of Judah. He came out of Ephraim. He said, I can see Jesus going like this to all of Judah and walking out of the crowd and walking over into Ephraim and saying, now I know my true identity. We were laughing about it and just having a good time. But that's what I'm saying. We're all in this together and we want time. time to stay in and realize it's eternity, and all of eternity and every realm is moving with everything we see, every desire we have, and every decision we make. Every realm is fluctuating with it and moving with it. It's our time. It's our season. It's the woman's nature now. Woman nature coming to light, attributing transition, bringing us out of that male domination into love and empathy and compassion and inclusion and oneness. That's a woman. That's the woman nature. I hope I've been able to help. It's a great day that we're in. It's a great understanding. Remember what I said. Cycles are going on all across the earth. Cycles of male and female. Don't get so angry at people when they have such a different view. They just haven't pulled out of a cycle. Mm-hmm. Some maybe have been born here just to stay in that cycle and they can't go any further. It's okay. No worries. The Spirit is in every one of the cycles. We just happen to be so blessed to be in the one that He's moving in now. I always want to be there. I always want to be so flexible. I always want to just be so open, so mutable, that when the Spirit begins to put a damper on a culture and begins to turn that damper down and shut the heat off and make it go cold, I want to be where the Spirit is going. I don't want to be where the Spirit was. I want to be where it's at and where it's going. It's my nature. And in doing that, it's not always easy. Sometimes you cry for loss of good friends. Sometimes it hurts to watch whole groups walk away. Sometimes it kills you to sit back and watch for 6 years a dispensation that you created, the Third Testament, and watch them fail year after year after year to step forward and die, and more death and more death and more death. And it hurts on the inside. But then on the other hand, you know that they are not going anywhere. They're not being eternally separated. They're not going into a devil's hell. They're not going anywhere. They are just not moving fully in the flow of the Spirit here. And somewhere throughout eternity, Paul said, if here only we have hope, we are of all men most miserable. My hope and my understanding and my surety and my revelation is that whoever falls back here in a dead land, I'm going to meet them again in a better situation, and things are going to be great. So that's my love for each one of us. Is there anything that anybody would want to say? Or
Alan Stokes, he put a few things. We are far away from all that old traditions of the past. Just like the old ministries is dead. Nature itself trashes all those things.
yes.
And then Joe Gomez put, is unmasking time. Unmasking.
It's an unmasking time. Yes. Yes. It is.
And then Alan Stockless put something else. We are in control.
Yes.
That's all
It's
becomes.
it is, it's an unmasking time. It's time to become a super spreader.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
That's what it is. And don't get all shook up. I'm not talking about the coronavirus. I'm talking about something totally different. It's time. That's the antitype. It's time for us to unmask ourselves and become a super spreader.
And that may make you an outlaw.
Yeah.
Because the way things are going with the establishment, they'll make free speech and truth illegal. So for you to unmask and stand out there and tell the truth will make you an outlaw.
And try.
So just because it's of the law doesn't mean it's right. And that's the way things are going now. You have to become, in essence, an outlaw to stand out there and tell the truth.
And try.
You know?
Yes.
They tell you to be quiet. Who was it? Paul Revere went through and said the British are coming. If he'd have listened to him and said, keep quiet, don't you say anything,
And try.
they'd have never known it was coming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But he had the guts to get out there and ride through town and tell everybody, get ready, it's coming.
Yes.
Yeah.
You just have to have the courage
That's
to
right.
know that's what you're there for and step
Yes.
up and do it.
Mm-hmm.
Just because it's a law doesn't make it right.
That's it.
A law set in Germany to bring all of those people in, turn them in. And they turned them in and they killed every one of them. When the law turns into tyranny, it's not right.
All right.
And so many things now are happening with us, and that is our antitype. They're trying to mask everything when it's a time of revealing. It's a time of unmasking. It's a time of opening up your identity. It's a time of moving from sea of brass to sea of glass. It's a time to become transparent and everyone understand who you are.
It's not about what's lawful, it's about what's just.
And try.
Mm-hmm.
Amen. We love you. Thank you for coming in and listening with us. This is the last, as far as I know, unless Brother Rick and Brother Stephen, they're coming over to visit. If they want to do a fellowship, I'll announce it and give you plenty of time. I don't know if they will or won't, but this may be the last one of the year. As 2021 comes around, I put it out here the other day. This is when 2021 comes, this is the first year that we will have hindsight 2020. So
That's very true.
So we're ending a brand new year. I kind of put the tone myself to it, the mode. The motto is fast forward. Let's move on and let's move to the future. Let's move to before the rulership of Eden. Let's move to those things. And let's be a super spreader and spread everywhere we can throughout the earth. Love bless. Take this authority that you have. Take everything that you understand. Use it for one another. Pull it in and use it for yourself. We have healing. We have compassion. We have love. We have all these things for ourselves. Use it. That energy, use it in every way. Love bless.